We're going to do a placemat to help you remember some of the documents that you've seen in prior sessions. So nothing you're going to see in this placemat is totally, well, there may be something a little new, but most of them are familiar. I want to remind you it is a silent protocol, and you are going to read for 90 seconds with your markers capped, and then you are going to write when I cue you. The time will decrease each time. You can write facts, opinions, questions, replies to each other, anything that you remember or you want to reflect on when you go to have that conversation, capture it in the box that is for your artifacts. So I'm going to have Rhonda pass those artifacts out to you. If you'll clear some space and grab your placemat and set up your placemat like this. Before we start, or before you get to moving around too much, you're going to be looking at the artifacts only in the red box. Each of them have a lot more information than you're going to need. So find the red box. That's what you're going to focus on in each of those as you look at each artifact. Andy Dwyer up in the top left. A classroom profile here and in the bottom left. And then another class profile, bottom right. Up on your feet, please.
Those slides were really reviewing what we had done with them in session 1. And so we wanted to bring that back to the front of their mind before we talked about zooming out. And we wanted to get them back to that student level and remind them of the pieces that they could see here.
This is a protocol we use a lot to gauge where all of the participants are sort of individually and collectively, kind of see where they're at, possible misconceptions, especially if we're doing it on the front end of some more direct teaching like happened in this session. It allows us, if there are possible misconceptions, all the stuff in everyone's head is really visible because we're walking around and we're looking at it and we're seeing it, and it can guide the rest of the conversation. So if we see that there's a misconception around one of these indicators, one of these data points, and we know that that is prerequisite to something else that we need to say later, a connection we need to make later, then we can pivot or tweak how we talk about it in a future moment to kind of guide and shape the direct piece that follows in the moment.
It really allows them to start defining their own lens through which they're going to kind of view this. When we are the ones just sort of presenting everything, sort of rotely, they're getting our lens. An activity such as this really allows them to start forming their own. And some of the misconceptions that might arise from one person looking at one quadrant get corrected by the next person that comes through that quadrant or in the discussion that follows, and certainly in the follow-up we do. So there's a lot of good constructivist learning theory built in to an activity like this, which really does, just call for them to filter the content through their own lens. And this allows for that opportunity while, like Jake said, kind of creating that, and Lindsay said, creating that sort of collective sense of understanding.
All right. Take a look at the screen. I want you guys to have a conversation. Don't worry about writing right now, but just talk about what are some of her successes and sorrows as she looks at this data. And what next steps would you recommend? So have a conversation about that. I'll give you guys about 3 minutes to talk about it.
Well, there's 9 out of 26 that have a disability. So what level are we teaching at?
Yeah,
Did we stay in tier
50% of the ones that were targeted are students with disabilities.
The students that regressed from PM1, PM2, or even the prior year to PM1, are there any trends with those students? Like, did they start in similar places? Do they have anything in common? Like, I wonder if there's something we could focus in on as to why that's happening with a group of students.
But with a giant majority of our students in the state scoring a level 1 on PM1, how would the PR decrease that much?
It shouldn't.
Because like,
Yeah, it
if this
shouldn't
was
decrease
just
that much.
percentile, I would understand
Because
it, but I don't
everybody's
understand it with-
decreasing.
Yeah, I don't understand it with
But so
levels.
it would be percentile rank, you wouldn't see a change. If everybody decreased, you wouldn't see a change at the same rate.
And I get this is like a hypothetical. I'm just like, well, I don't know, is it a hypothetical?
No, it's real data. I mean, Leslie's not the person's name, but yeah, it's real data.
So what it says to me, in the absence of any other context, is we have a pretty high percentage of students who score in level 1 at PM1.
Yeah.
Right? So within that level 1, it's not necessarily 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20% of all the kids. You might have a pretty high percentage of kids who score level 1 on PM1, and it's where within that range are they in the percentile ranking? And did they go up from PM3 last year, or did they go down?
So they could still, like with this student being 53rd percentile, 53rd percentile could technically be
100%, because what that is a projection of where they'll be on PM3. On PM1, it may show up as a level 1, but that's why it's so important to look at that percentile and see, okay, at PM3, do we have that data? Is that the right piece of data?
He didn't take PM3. He hasn't taken PM3 yet.
Got it.
I hear such great conversations
But like you would expect him still to fall within that 50 PR for
Right, so
PM1, even though.
So his previous year PR was 50 something. I don't know where he landed. Well, he did. He landed in achievement level 3. And now his PM1, he has dropped down to like 5th percentile, which puts him on track to be a solid level 1.
So it's not saying that he scored necessarily a level 1 on that first PM. It's just saying that his percentile is projecting.
Correct. If nothing changes and he stays at that percentile the rest of the year, that's where he's going to end up.
Gotcha.
At the end of the year.
See, I was thinking.
Does that help clarify it a little bit?
I was
Okay.
thinking this.
If you haven't put something in the box, go ahead and do that. I'm going to have y'all share in a moment. I hear such great conversations happening. I want you to capture success, sorrow, and next steps in the center box as a team. Write it in the box. Okay. Let me pull you guys back together. Let's share a couple of these takeaways. What's a success that we can say was clear for Leslie Nope's class? Somebody share a success for us. Yes.
Her tier 3 instruction is solid.
Tier 3, more solid than the rest. Yeah. Definitely her lower level students are performing much higher, are growing a lot more quickly than the others. Excellent. What else? What's a sorrow? Say again? Her on-level friends are not moving. They're not growing quickly enough. Thank you.
I interject with a question. Do you all remember, and you guys can't answer, do you all remember how the students are organized on the classroom profile? K12 Lift is using a very specific way to organize those students. They're not alphabetical. Do you remember how they're organized?
Is it the percentile rank from the previous year?
From the prior year, from lowest percentile rank to highest, and that's why on the artifact where Lisa just referred to, all those lower performing students are on track for a year's material in a year's time. Lisa attributed that to tier 3 instruction, right? Do we have evidence that it's tier 3 instruction, or what might else be happening?
Well, for tier 1 instruction, time is probably being filled up with tier 2 and 3 instructional materials.
Sometimes we teach down to those students, and the rest of the friends are not able to grow and accelerate at the rate that they need to, right? So maybe that is also what's happening in that situation. But I thought I was talking with the table and they didn't remember the organization of that, so.
Thank you for sharing that. What would you say would be some next steps for this teacher? Next steps. What'd you write?
Problem solve with the PLC and coach team and look through their standards and benchmarks with the group.
Yeah.
Look for things or do things like their hot questioning and things like that as they're talking to their kids.
Yes. They do need to talk together, right? She needs someone else to help her problem solve and think through this. And then you had another, what was your second thing you said? I missed that.
They're hitting the benchmark.
Yes.
Looking at the benchmark correctly. And making
Yes.
sure that
On grade level, right? And not geared just for our students who have all the gaps. Yeah, thank you. Nice. Is there anything else you want to add to this from things that you heard?
Yeah, I want to share a quick story from Rural Connect 1 with the math teachers, because we heard a lot of conversations that were very similar to the conversations that y'all were just having, and I think it would be really encouraging for y'all to hear. As teachers were going in and looking at their own students' data, there were a lot of teachers that had data that sort of looked like Miss Nope's data, where they were noticing that some of their previously lower performing students were making some good growth. We're having gains. We're seeing those percentiles go up. And of course, this was just PM1, not PM2. But then they were seeing the reverse trend happening with their previously higher achieving students. And the big takeaway was, hey, my lower achieving students have this potential, right? And so if I can keep growing on that potential, and then I can readdress what's happening with my higher achieving students and bump my rigor, which is actually the same thing that I just said my lower achieving students need, I'm going to wind up with 85% proficiency. And the way I'm going to get there is increasing the rigor, being better aligned to the benchmarks. And it was just a really cool moment of, for the last 2 years, PM1 has caused us a lot of anxiety and has been sort of a morale killer. And teachers left that first session after that conversation more excited than I've seen teachers around data in a long time. And it sounded a lot like the conversations that y'all were just having. So I wanted to share, they're y'all's teachers. They're you know, we like to claim them too, but they go home to y'all every day. And that was happening. It was just super exciting for us.
And we really wanted to put this content back in front of you as a reminder of the things that you interacted with at our last session. Those student growth indicators are really important, and you saw an emphasis on those in each of the quadrants. And so I hope that helped to orient you and get you ready for the next thing. Y'all ready?